Hello everyone, class is in session. My name is Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to look at the first Raw after Survivor Series. What an eventful Survivor Series we had. Would Raw follow suit? Well, in my opinion it was eventful, but maybe for the wrong reasons. And some of it was okay too. Let's take a look at what was good and what was bad as we break down every single segment and assign it a lovely grade. This is Monday Night Raw's Graded. That's the intro there. So we opened Raw with acting general manager Baron Corbin and the commissioner of Monday Night Raw, Stephanie McMahon. Style grace, she's never going to be demoted, never. Welcome to the queendom. They're both in a really good mood, obviously, because Raw won at Survivor Series. And not just that, but Stephanie claims that SmackDown didn't even win one match. Except they totally did on the pre-show, thanks to the Usos in the big 10-man tag team elimination match. So that's caused a bit of an issue on Twitter, hasn't it? Xavier Woods is livid and I believe has changed his Twitter name to Xavier Woods Sweep Denier or something like that, or No Sweep Woods, or something along those lines. But you know what? Let's assume that Stephanie's right. Let's just pretend that the pre-show doesn't count and that Raw did indeed sweep SmackDown at Survivor Series. Now, if that even is the case, why do I care so much? That's not going to make me particularly want to boo Stephanie or cheer her, because I don't particularly support Raw or SmackDown. I don't support any brands. I'm a fan of the WWE product in general, rather than a fan of these arbitrary divisions in amongst their own ranks. I do support NXT though. But it's not long before Braun comes out and hits the ring, and obviously he wants Stephanie to honour the conditions that were laid out before him before the Survivor Series match. Obviously, if Braun helped Raw win at Survivor Series, then he'd get a rematch with Lesnar, and he'd get his hands on Baron Corbin, and he'd get to pick the stipulation for the Corbin match. But Stephanie kind of changed things up here. She said, you know what, if you beat Corbin, then you get your match against Lesnar at the Royal Rumble, and the match with Corbin's going to be at TLC. And then Strowman went, well, you're not only going to get these hands, Baron, you're going to get these tables, these ladders, and these chairs. It's going to be a TLC match between Corbin and Strowman. And Corbin was so confident, and I don't understand why. He was like, that match obviously favours me. And I was like, does it? Really, Baron? You're against 7-foot monster Braun Strowman, and he's got weapons at his disposal. I'm not sure I agree with you. There are more conditions as well. If Corbin wins, then he'll become the proper full-time general manager of Monday Night Raw. But if he loses, he'll be stripped of all of his authority. Ooh, it's tense time. Strowman's almost certainly going to win, in my opinion. I think he must be, yeah, come on. Corbin then books a handicap match for tonight, pitting Braun Strowman against Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. And Stephanie goes, no, it's actually going to be a 6-man tag team match. It's going to be Corbin, Lashley and McIntyre against Strowman, Balor and Elias. And Corbin's like, oh no, and he's really worried. And I was like, you've just loved the fact that Strowman's booked himself in a TLC match against you, and now you're terrified of a 6-man on Raw? Very strange behaviour from the big Baron man. I'm going to give this segment a C-. I thought it was kind of a bleh opening to Raw. Nothing particularly bad though, apart from one thing in theory, if it is true. I've seen something floating around on Twitter that suggests that Stephanie used some language that would suggest that it was WWE taking a dig at the whole Jamal Khashoggi Saudi Arabia situation, but doing so in a vague enough way to have plausible deniability. I hope that it's not true, but apparently Stephanie did say in this promo something along the lines of, when Strowman dismembers Corbin, it'll be a corporate liability, mimicking language that was used a lot in the reporting of the Jamal Khashoggi killing. So that's very sinister if true, and in really bad taste by WWE, and I really hope that it was just an accident, but I don't know. Now on to that 6-man tag match, and not only that, but it was a 6-man tag team elimination match, playing off of the whole Survivor Series thing. Yes, Survivor Series is over, but the spirit of eliminations lives on. So let's run through the eliminations. First of all, Drew McIntyre eliminates Finn Balor with a Claymore kick after 18 minutes or so. Yes, it took 18 minutes for the first elimination of this match to take place. We're in for a long one. Next up, Lio Rush taunts Elias on the outside. Elias gives chase and gets splattered by Bobby Lashley coming around the other way, and Elias gets counted out. It's now 3-on-1 to the heel team. Braun then manages to get his hands on Corbin, hits him with the big power slam, but Drew breaks up the pinfall with a steel chair and gets himself disqualified. And from that moment on, the match is kind of just thrown out after a long match as well, and we didn't really get a clean finish at all, or a decisive finish, any sort of finish. There was no announcement, I don't think. The match was just kind of waved off, and the heels all beat down Strowman for ages and ages and ages, and then Baron Corbin took his belt off, because he's sexy like that, but he wasn't stripping. He was actually using his belt to restrain one of Strowman's arms. They tied it around Strowman's wrist, they laid it flat across some steps, and then Corbin picked up like a set of steel ring steps and did like a con-steel toe, a con-steps toe, a con-step toe, like the concerto but with steps. He crushed Braun Strowman's arm. So I'm going to give this match, and it sounds harsh, but I'll explain. I'm giving it a D+. This was long, and it didn't need to be, and we didn't even get a proper finish, so I was really kind of hacked off by that. Also, it was as if like the crowd and the viewing audience, myself included, just the longer it went, the more tired we all got with it. It was a long old opening to Raw. I'm not against long matches on Raw. Sometimes it's a nice change of pace. Like that gauntlet match, for example, back in like February, whenever it was. But this one was not that. This one was dominated by the heels, just beating down the faces a lot. Really deflating match to start things off. I was tempted to give it a bit of a higher grade though, because I thought the beatdown was quite cool afterwards, and I thought it might have saved it. But I've realised that there's just no reason for Drew and for Lashley to be Corbin's kind of lapdogs. Why would Drew I know he's got beef with Strowman, but not really these days. He's more of just a loose cannon just battering everybody. And yes, he doesn't like Strowman, but I don't think that he should be someone else's henchman just because of that. He's already Ziggler's henchman, sort of, even though he's starting to break free. As for Bobby Lashley, he's got his own thing going on with Lio Rush. I don't know why, just because they're heels doesn't mean they need to get along as heels. I said the same thing about Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax at Survivor Series. Next up, Seth Rollins hits the ring and reveals that on Sunday night that was the 6-year anniversary of the Shield's debut in WWE. They debuted, of course, at Survivor Series 2012, helping the best in the world to retain the championship. That is CM Punk, not Shane McMahon. God no. Rollins then says that Dean Ambrose, he's realised now, has always been this same bitter, twisted character, and that despite all those years spent as his best friend, he actually learned more about him by watching his network special the other day, available for only $9.99 per month. He didn't quite go that far, but he might as well have said that. Ambrose then appeared on the Tron and said, well, the Shield's always been rotten to the core, and all three of us are going to have to pay for that in our own separate ways. Roman Reigns, for example, and as he said Roman's name, I was like, don't say it, please don't. And he went, Roman Reigns is going to have to deal with the man upstairs. And I was like, oh, I can't believe. The crowd didn't even really boo. They just sort of went, why? Why have you said this? Ambrose then says that Seth's fate is even worse than that because he has to deal with Ambrose himself. And then Seth got really annoyed and ran backstage to try and find him. And we progressed on. That would carry on later on through the night. But whew, there was some serious things said in this promo segment. I'm going to give this a B- because while I don't agree with the content of always using Roman Reigns in this feud, and I just think it's a little bit tasteless. I'm absolutely positive that Reigns is probably all right with it. He's obviously signed off on this, otherwise they wouldn't be shoehorning his very real illness into this whole situation. But at the same time, I don't think this feud needs it at all. Rollins and Ambrose have so much history between them that they don't need to use Roman's leukemia to get heat on Ambrose, which is effectively what they're doing. So yeah, B-, but I thought that they performed it well enough. So that's why it doesn't get a lower grade, I guess. And this will carry on through the night, and we'll take a look at what happened after that in due course. But for now, it is a B-. Next up, we had Sasha Banks and Bayley versus Nia Jax and Tamina. And in between the entrances and the beginning of the match, we had another vignette for Lars Sullivan. And that was a pretty nice video package. It was certainly nicer than this match was. This was not the right sort of match to have after that mammoth opening elimination tag match that honestly stretched on for over 20 minutes, maybe even closer to 30 minutes. This match didn't go as long, it was only about 10, but at the same time, it was, again, heel dominated. Basically, the story of this match was just Sasha and Bayley, two of the most important, influential women in the history of women's wrestling, just bouncing off the heels, just selling for them and bumping for them. And Nia and Tamina didn't really work with much intensity. They were just kind of striding about. It reminded me of the end of the 2015 Royal Rumble when Roman Reigns is having to fight back against all these insurmountable odds, and you've got the Big Show and Kane just lethargically eliminating babyface after babyface by knocking them out, scooping them up, and just going, ugh. That's kind of what Nia and Tamina's offense reminds me of. It's not a compliment, I'm afraid. Nia won with the Samoan drop, and I'm going to give this match a D. I understand why Nia's getting a push because of the whole Becky Lynch situation, and it's a good way of getting heat on her. And whether you agree with it or not, you have to admit that it is an effective tactic. But at the same time, that doesn't mean this match was a good one. The only thing good about it really was that Nia and Tamina won, and I guess they probably should have given the role that Nia's about to go on. But it wasn't fun to watch, sadly. In fact, I wonder, couldn't they have had her, instead of this, probably beat like Dana Brooke or someone in a singles match in more of a squash, rather than Sasha and Bayley, who just continue to get just nailed every week. Oh, just let them wrestle each other. Making them go to counselling was the worst thing Kurt Angle ever did. Next up, this was a bit of a weird one. The Lucha House Party, all 3 members, against the Revival, all 2 members. Yes, this was a Lucha House Rules match, which basically meant a 3-on-2 handicap. Usually handicap matches are kind of set up by an authority figure these days to help get sympathy for a babyface because they got like 2 or 3 heels trying to get at them at the same time. In this instance, I have no idea what this handicap match was for because the babyfaces had the numerical advantage, whereas the heels were fighting against the odds. Who booked this and why? What's going on? Not only that, but the Lucha House Party won in about 2 minutes, defeating the Revival after Lince Dorado, my boy, but starting to be a bit wary of Lince Dorado if he's willfully engaging in such heelish tactics as a babyface. But Lince won with the shooting star press, unsurprisingly, because there was 3 of them and only 2 of the Revival. I'm giving this match, and I'm sorry, but I'm giving this match an E. I'll explain why. The booking here was honestly outrageous, and this only escapes an F because the wrestling was actually quite good for the 2 minutes or so that it lasted, but I honestly don't understand why the babyfaces had the advantage and why the heels, who almost won the tag match for Raw on the pre-show at Survivor Series, establishing themselves as the tag team with all the momentum on Raw, why did the Revival lose in about 2 minutes? I don't understand what's going on. Are we meant to think the Revival are good or bad? They took the Usos and the New Day to the limit on Sunday night, and now they get put in a match against admittedly 3 other dudes, but it's the Lucha House Party, and they don't even last for more than 2 minutes. This was maybe my least favourite thing on the show. Next up, it's the Raw Women's Champion, Ronda Rousey, and she has a microphone in her hand, and she's smiling. Little bit of a problem here. Why is she smiling when Charlotte Flair broke her to pieces on Sunday night? She wasn't smiling maybe as much as she normally does though, so I guess we can sort of forgive it a little bit, but I did notice, and judging by Twitter, social media noticed as well. Ronda announces that she is defending the title against Nia Jax at TLC, and I think that's a good decision. It'll get Ronda cheered again after she's been kind of overshadowed by Becky and Charlotte in the grand scheme of things. And also she says that's not enough for me. I want to put the belt on the line tonight and I'm calling an open challenge. That brought out Baron Corbin. Corbin went, whoa, Ronda, you're not allowed to put the title on the line tonight. We need you to be champion so that you can go into that match with Nia Jax with the title, because that's the money match, baby, because Baron's a real promoter and he knows this sort of stuff. He's actually learning the art of promotion really well. And I think in a few weeks' time, he'll be good enough to start putting up flyers around town or bringing in like American imports like Val Venus and Gangrel to squash all the promising upcoming young talent. I think that's probably what's going to happen. Ronda's not impressed with Corbin's decision and says, well, if you're not letting me defend the title, how about you step in the ring and have a piece of me? And Corbin goes, whoa, okay, you can defend your title then? Okay, fine, I'll let you do that. But I'm about to bring out a woman who's going to be the next Raw Women's Champion. And I was like, ooh, who's this going to be? And it was Mickie James. So I'm going to give this a B-. It was okay. Didn't really like Ronda smiling a lot, but at the same time, it wasn't overboard, I guess. And she got intense when she needed to. And she still looked a bit battered and bruised, so probably because she really was battered and bruised. Also, it was a bit weird at the end with Corbin going, right, this is going to show you, you're putting your title on the line, prepare to lose, because I'm going to give you Mickie James. I was like, well, that's a bit of a strange one. And I like Mickie James. It's not a knock on her. It's just, we know she's not going to beat Ronda Rousey. On to the match itself, which only lasted about 2 minutes really. Mickie tried to work Ronda's injured ribs and body from Charlotte's beatdown on Sunday, but it didn't really work, and Ronda eventually caught her and forced her to tap out. Then on the way out, Ronda ran into Nia and Tamina. Nia looked at her own fist, sort of blew on it and went, as if to say like, this is what's waiting for you at TLC. I'm going to give this match a C+. There wasn't much to really go on here because it was quite short, but at the same time it was decent. The only problem was I'd have liked to have seen Ronda sell a bit more, sell that beatdown a little bit more. I've seen some reports that apparently WWE booked it this way because they're worried that if Ronda isn't portrayed as really dominant all the time, especially after being battered by Charlotte on Sunday, then the fans might start booing her, so they need to get them back on side by making her a killer again. I'm not sure if that's why fans are booing her, but maybe they should stop her from tweeting weird stuff instead. Like saying that Becky's got a dick or what? I'm so confused with what Ronda's been tweeting recently, I don't even know. But this was fine. C+ is the grade. Next up, we had the AOP with Drake Maverick, who pissed his pants on Sunday at Survivor Series because he was scared of the Big Show. against Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. This match was set up backstage earlier on the night because all of the tag team division were laughing at Drake Maverick because he pissed his pants at Survivor Series. Drake Maverick got really annoyed and said, right, no one else make any more jokes. And then guess who made a joke? That Joker tag team of Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. And then, you know, Drake Maverick went, you're in for a world of hurt because you're facing the AOP later on tonight. But he said, you're in for a world of hurt? Like wee-wee. Because he pissed his pants on Sunday at Survivor Series. Oh. So this match, right, having been built on piss jokes, was then full of piss jokes from commentary, from the crowd who were chanting AOP, PP, we. This feud is built around urine. And that wasn't even the worst part of the match. The worst part was that the AOP lost in about 4 minutes. Their first loss, I believe, certainly their first sort of pinfall loss on Monday Night Raw against Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, who got the match because they told some wee jokes. That's the authors of pain. Remember how good they were on NXT. So another tag match and another E grade for the AOP versus Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. And I bet the AOP are wishing they'd kept Paul Ellering around, to be honest with you. This would never have happened. Not on his watch. Next up, Natalya versus Ruby Riott. Obviously, Ruby Riott's been really dickish to Natalya recently after ripping up her dad's sunglasses and then bragging about it every week. The pair had a little fight backstage at Survivor Series, and that led to Alexa Bliss kicking them both off the Survivor Series Raw women's team. And then it led to this singles match on Raw. So let's see what happened. Wasn't as wacky as some of the other things on Raw, but it was okay. So predictably, the Riott squad, Sarah Logan and Liv Morgan, tried to do all they could on the outside to distract Natalya and to help Ruby Riott win. At one point, Natalya got the sharpshooter on, but they dragged Ruby Riott to safety. Then Ruby got back in the ring. A little while later on, she got a roll-up or an inside cradle or something on Natalya, but Natalya reversed it, showing good experience and that sort of thing, and actually picked up the surprising victory. Surprising in my opinion, anyway. This gets a C, straight down the middle. Nothing particularly spectacular here, but nothing bad either. And it was nice to see Natalya pick up a win by virtue of her technicality, because she's good at technical stuff. Because she's got a heart background, she should be good at the technical stuff. She reversed that roll-up, picked up the pinfall, and I thought that was fine. Didn't get very long, wasn't like brilliant or anything, but it did a job. So now we get to the final segment of Raw, but before we talk about it, I'm going to update you on all the little backstage segments that happened throughout the night. Basically, the theme of it was that after Rollins had ran backstage to try and confront Dean, Dean had led him on a weird game of like hide and seek through the Staples Center, but one that made Rollins look like an absolute idiot. The reason I say that is because Dean basically gave Rollins clues as to where he was hiding. Very obvious clues. He said, I'm going to be waiting for you somewhere where the Shield used to call home. And he meant the boiler room. But Rollins kept like following Titus O'Neil. Maybe I missed a bit where he actually found the boiler room and then Dean wasn't in there. I hope so, because otherwise Rollins looks like a tit. But basically the long and short of it was Rollins couldn't find him despite, you know, there being a lot of evidence as to where Dean was. And I'm sure that the backstage area wasn't that big. I know it's an arena, but come on, Seth. CrossFit Jesus with your cardio and stuff. Anyway, Seth then left. So Dean came out to address the crowd and cut a promo running them down for their views on him, and also called them smelly. So two key issues with the crowd there. One, their views on him and his actions recently, and two, they also smell a lot because they're from LA. That seemed to be the gist of his promo. But then suddenly, burn it down, Seth Rollins came out to the ring and everyone was like, hang on, we thought he left, but it was just a wily little trick to lure Dean Ambrose out because somehow he couldn't find him backstage, and then you could jump him in front of the crowd in the arena. They brawled into the crowd, they brawled back to ringside, and then they got in the ring. It looked like Rollins was about to hit the curb stomp, but Dean like ducked out of the way, low blow, dirty deeds, and then another dirty deeds, and Dean Ambrose stood tall to end the show. I'm going to give this a B. I think I would probably have given it a higher grade if it weren't for all the little bits of backstage segment-y sort of stuff, because I wasn't a huge fan of that. I found it a bit annoying in parts, but the brawl was good to end the show. I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, I think a B is a fair grade, but let's move on to the overall grade of Raw. Would it be as high as that final segment? Would it get a B or above? No, God no it wouldn't. No, absolutely not. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to give this Raw a D-. It was a show that was booked strangely, ordered strangely, paced strangely, and honestly did a lot more harm than it did good. I've seen reports online that apparently the script for this show was written very last minute, even later than they usually do, and they often rewrite things the day of and that sort of thing. But apparently this show in particular was very last minute, and you could tell if that is true. You could certainly tell. Usually as well, even week Raws these days, because they run for 3 hours, there's a good match in there somewhere. But on this Raw, there wasn't really a standout match. you've kind of got a choice between a very straightforward singles match that lasted a few minutes between Natalya and Ruby Riott, or like a half-hour, six-man elimination tag at the start of the show, which, while technically okay, really sapped the energy out of the crowd from the get-go. So yeah, not the best Raw, sadly, not at all. So on that slightly disappointing note, I guess that's been graded for Monday Night Raw, the show after Survivor Series. Adam Pacitti is off this week, so I'll be filling in for SmackDown Graded tomorrow. But for now, thank you very much for watching this video, and let us know what you thought of Raw in the comment section down below. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can find me on Twitter at JackTheJobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic generally, and check out our Patreon as well if you want to at patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, if you haven't already, to hit subscribe and to join us.